Good morning, and we are now live on YouTube and Facebook. So, welcome to one and all for another session of daily learning and lockdown inspiration. I hope you're all keeping well and keeping healthy, and keep on posting your comments on the chat as you're entering on either Facebook or YouTube. We'd love to hear from you, to engage with you. So, please do. Good morning to all. Great stuff. I see people are logging on as we're speaking. So please continue and just comment in the comments box. Walk in. Good morning to one and all. Give it a minute or so for people to log on. Okay, let's welcome you personally. Those of you that are shared in the comments, I'm going to welcome you personally. Good morning to Charmaine Shatkin, to Anne Hack, Felicia Jenks. Oh, you liked my jersey last night. Thank you. Mark Wachenheimer. Thank you. Thanks for your greetings there on Facebook. If anyone else would like to share your greetings with us as you're logging in, please do. Let us know you're with us. On YouTube, we have Dennis Solomons, Fega Sega, Murad Walker, and a big mazel tov to you and to the entire family for Dovi's wedding in California. Mazel tov, beautiful. Manfred Kalmek, good morning. Stephen Herr, yes, we'll learn the Ilu Nishmat, Esther Bat Moshe, your mother, may her neshama have nachas. Shelley Smith, Ian Clemenson, Stephen Herr, thank you. Donna Lovitz, Melissa Genendi, thank you very much. Right. Anyone else who's logging on onto Facebook, please share with us your greetings. I also want to dedicate today's learning in merit of a refuah shalema for Shmuel ben Itamira, who's going through a serious procedure today. So we'll have in mind Shmuel ben Itamira should have a refuah shalema, and we'll dedicate today's learning to him, a good friend, and we wish him complete recovery. Ronnie Kotkus is tuning in from work. Ronnie, what more can we ask for, hey? You're tuning in from work. Great. Fantastic. Please God, this will help your work fly and be successful once we're done. I see other people are logging on. New people are logging on to Facebook and to YouTube. So if you're just joining us, please do let us know you're with us. We're going to get going. Today is Rosh Hodesh. It's Rosh Hodesh, second day Rosh Hodesh. So yesterday was the 30th of Sivan, end of the previous month, and today is Aleph Tammuz, the beginning of the next month. So I would like to chat today about Rosh Hodesh, but in particular, the calendar that we follow. The calendar we follow, we know, is the Lunar Calendar, because Judaism and the months of the year follow the Lunar Cycle, the cycle of the moon. That's the reason why in times of old, we needed witnesses to testify that they had seen the new moon. Because without those witnesses, we can't decide if it's the end of the month or the beginning of a new month. That's one of the reasons why we have 2 days Rosh Hodesh, is because we're not sure what day is supposed to be Rosh Hodesh based on the testimony from the witnesses. And so therefore, it's important for us to understand that Judaism is following the lunar calendar, and the lunar calendar based on the cycle of the moon. That's why we have a Rosh Hodesh every month. We have a New Year's every month. It's called New Month, Rosh Hodesh. Why? Not just because it's the start of a new month, but it's different to, let's say, the Gregorian calendar, which follows the solar cycle. For us, a new month means a real renewal. Real renewal meaning because there's a new moon. And so therefore, when we celebrate Rosh Hodesh, it's really a new start. It's a new beginning. It's a new moon. Obviously not a new moon, but it's a new cycle of the moon. And that's what we'll discuss in a short while. If you have any questions on our topic of today, Rosh Hodesh, the lunar calendar, the solar calendar, please do comment in the chats. It's good to have you all here. We have over 30 students, 30 viewers here today. So well done for joining. Thank you for tuning in live to YouTube and Facebook. Great to have you all here. In contrast to the lunar calendar that we follow, we do know that Judaism also pays attention to the cycle of the sun. So although our calendar isn't based on the sun, although in some regards maybe it is, but generally not, nonetheless we do follow the sun. The Gregorian calendar follows the sun entirely, the cycle of the sun. We follow the cycle of the moon. The difference is going to be in how many days you have in your year. If you follow the sun, you have 365 days in the year. 365. If you follow the moon, can anyone guess, or does anyone know, should I say, how many days in the year if you follow the lunar calendar? The Jewish calendar. How many days in the year if you follow the lunar calendar? What's your thoughts? What do you think? Is it the same as the sun? Ian, I'm coming to your question in just a moment, Ian. Well done for that. That's correct. But I just want to clarify this. Does anyone know how many days in the Hebrew calendar? And the time is ticking. Tick, 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 tick. Okay, let me share with you. The solar calendar, the Gregorian calendar, following the solar cycle, has 365 days. The lunar calendar, following the moon, has 354 days. That's 11 days short of the solar calendar. Okay, we'll get to that as well. Nonetheless, coming back to our topic, while Judaism, so there's a few questions we still have to address. Number one, why do we follow the lunar calendar, and what's up with this new start, the Rosh Hodesh, the new beginning? I want to come back to that. I want to come back to the previous point. I see here Ian's question. Do we not also follow the seasons? Right, we are going to discuss the seasons as well. So let's get on to that. Because in Judaism, we do follow the solar calendar in some regard. For example, as Ian points out on YouTube, we follow the seasons. So we follow the seasons, and the seasons of the year are based on the solar calendar. Very good. We also follow the beginning and the start of a day follows the sun cycle. So when is sunrise, when is sunset, follows the sun as well. So in Judaism, although we follow the lunar calendar, in some aspects, we're following the sun as well. We don't necessarily follow the Gregorian calendar, but there's aspects of the sun, the cycle of the sun, that we do follow. So that's important to point out that Judaism actually works together, both together, not one or the other. Those of you on YouTube, on Facebook, can I ask you to like the video and share it so others can see what you're up to? And let's get going. Stephen Herr writes, how does it work with regards to witnesses of the new moon in today's times if we don't have a court? Very good question, Stephen. So today we actually don't rely on witnesses. That was a custom of old. It was actually a mitzvah of old to rely on the witnesses. We no longer have a Bet HaMikdash. And because we don't have a Bet HaMikdash, we therefore can't rely on witnesses to testify about the new moon. So we no longer rely on witnesses. Today we have a set calendar. Hillel the Great, or the elder of Hillel. He's the one that compiled the calendar that we have today, and we follow today's calendar. Not necessarily, we don't follow it. We know it's the new moon at that time, but we don't wait for witnesses to testify about the new moon they saw at that time. Okay? Right. Right, so the other point I wanted to get to was, look at the days. 365 versus 354. 365 is the solar cycle, and 354 is the lunar cycle. Why is that relevant? It's relevant to us because that explains the concept of a leap year. A Jewish leap year, that is. A leap year that adds on to the month of Adar. Right? The month of Adar. So every few years, we have two Adars. We have Adar Aleph and Adar Bet. Why are we adding on an extra Adar, an extra month? So now it's clear, because every year there's an 11-day discrepancy between the solar cycle and the lunar cycle. And in order to synchronize the two calendars, in order to bring the solar cycle and sync it with the lunar cycle, we need to add on to the Jewish calendar every 3 years or so, because every year is 11 days. So every 3 years or so, we need another month added on. 30 days, we need it added on. And this month is going to level out the playing field, because suddenly the lunar cycle, meaning the Jewish calendar, is going to catch up to the secular, to the Gregorian, should we call it, to the solar cycle. That's why we have a leap year. And what that leap year does is that it pushes out our seasons, as Ian pointed out. It pushes out our calendar. And this is why some years Pesach is early and some years Pesach is late, because it all depends on whether it's been before or after a leap year. But every year the Jewish calendar is losing 11 days. So every year Pesach turns out 11 days at least, 11 days after last year's Pesach, and so on and so forth. And that's why we add on an extra month on the lunar side, on the Jewish side, to push out the Jewish holidays, the Jewish calendar, in order to incorporate and to synchronize the two calendars together. So very good. Why is it important to synchronize the two calendars? Why are we even paying attention? And this goes back to Ian's point on YouTube. Why are we even paying attention to what takes place with the solar calendar? If we don't follow the solar calendar and we follow the lunar calendar, then that's enough for us. Who really cares how many days we're off from the solar cycle? The answer is we do follow the solar cycle, because we follow the solar seasons. The seasons of the year are dictated by the solar cycle, by the cycle of the sun. The sun dictates the seasons of the year. And so it's critical for Judaism to pay attention to the solar cycle, because we have to make sure that we're following the right seasons. For example, Pesach. Pesach needs to be in the spring season in the Northern Hemisphere. It has to be. Chodesh Ha'aviv, the Torah tells us. Pesach will be in the spring season. If we're going to allow for the 11-day discrepancy to keep on rolling, then eventually Pesach will not be in the season of spring. Eventually Pesach will be in midwinter or summer, because every day there's an 11-year change between the Jewish calendar and the seasonal calendar, meaning the solar calendar. And that's why we have to continuously add on the leap year, the Adar. We add on an Adar in order to push out the calendar, so we synchronize the two calendars together. I hope that explains the concept of the solar calendar, and which is the Gregorian calendar, and the lunar calendar, which is the Jewish calendar. I want to welcome you all here to another session of daily learning and lockdown inspiration. If you're just joining us online and you're one of our 40 participants that are here today between YouTube and Facebook, I ask you please to share this video. It's easier for the Facebookers to do this. Like the video, share it so others can see what you're up to. If you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. Share your questions in the comments box, and I will address them personally. Thank you. Good to have you all here. There's a fundamental principle and lesson that we can learn out from this. We don't call it lockdown inspiration for no reason. So let's get to the inspiration behind this. In Judaism, we follow both, which is quite unique. Why isn't one calendar enough? Let's just choose which one we're following. So we understand that we understand that we follow the seasons because we have to synchronize with the solar system. But why did God want it that way? Why did Hashem want it that way? There are two cycles, and Judaism sort of merges the two together, and we work with the Gregorian and the solar and the lunar calendar all coming together. Why is that important? Why is that important? Why is that so critical? And the answer is because each one of those has a fundamental lesson and principle to teach us. And that's what we're going to spend the rest of our time here. I see now from Brian Olwen. Yes, we make up Adar Bet. That's correct. Adar Bet is the additional month. That's because we try and push the additional month in close proximity to Pesach. Chagim based on farming and harvesting. That's right, Brian. The Chagim are based on the seasons, which is the harvesting and the farming. Correct. Thank you. Any other points or questions you want to share with us, please do. There's a fundamental principle. What do we learn from the solar calendar? What's the message of the sun? The message of the sun and the solar calendar is consistency. Consistency. The sun rises and the sun sets every day. Sunrise, sunset, as the famous song goes. That's the solar calendar. And it's teaching us in Judaism that we believe strongly in consistency in Judaism. We'd have a Shachris in the morning, we'd have a Mincha in the afternoon, we'd have a Mariv in the evening. There are certain things that are consistent and regular and have to be that way. That's the message that the solar calendar teaches us. It teaches us how to define things systematically and correctly, making sure that we're observing the mitzvot, observing the commandments as regular and consistent as possible. As we say in the laning of Rosh Hodesh, actually, in today's laning, although we didn't lane it today in shul, we say, Et hakeves echad ta'aseh baboker, v'eis hakeves hasheni ta'aseh bein harabayim. We offered up a offering, the Tamid offering in the morning, and we offered up the Tamid offering in the evening. Every morning and every evening was a sacrifice, was an offering that was offered up in the Beit HaMikdash every single day. There were some other sacrifices that were only brought at certain time periods, like the festivals and others. But the Tamid offering was offered up every day. That's the message of the solar cycle. We wake up in the morning, we see the sun rise, and we say, right, I got to do my stuff. I got to do Daven Shachris Mincha Mariv. I got to have my set studies, like a 10:30 Facebook or YouTube session with Rabbi Stern. I'm sure it's already diarized in your diaries for every day. So thank you for being here for today. But together with that, we also follow the lunar calendar. And what does the lunar calendar teach us? The lunar calendar teaches us to be spontaneous. Spontaneity is the key of Judaism. Not everything has to go according to system. Not everything has to be planned correctly. Not everything has to go in order. Sometimes it can be a spontaneous touch to our Jewish observance. And that's represented by the moon, the cycle of the lunar cycle. Because the moon continually waxes and wanes. It changes in sizes. It's different formats and different sizes each time. And so the lunar calendar teaches us to do things spontaneously, just like the moon. One day the moon does that, and one day the moon does this. One day the moon looks like this, and one day the moon looks like that. That's okay. That's part of the lunar cycle. And that's teaching us in Judaism. And Judaism wants us to be spontaneous. It wants us to do things that are unexpected. Unexpected. Let's say I never planned to join Rabbi Stern's online social media class at 10:30, but I happened to bump into it. Well, does that mean I should switch it off? Or maybe it means I should pause for a moment and take in the moment. Listen in, tune in, hear what he has to say. How does it relate to me? Because that's what the lunar cycle teaches me, is that today can be different to yesterday and tomorrow can be different today. Very different to the solar lesson that we learn, the lesson that we learn in the solar calendar. The lesson we learn from the lunar calendar is that it continuously waxes and wanes and changes all the time, and that's perfectly fine. That's encouraged. Because often our logical, finite minds tell us, well, you didn't plan for it. So if you didn't plan for it, then maybe not now. That's what the logical mind says, that everything has to go in order. Well, the lunar calendar of Judaism says absolutely not. From time to time, you can have inspiration and motivation and spontaneity and do things that are unexpected. And that's perfectly good. It's encouraged to be spontaneous. Hi, David Seif, at last. Boker Tov. Hi, David. I'm not sure why you battled. If anyone else is joining us now, please do let us know you're with us. If you have any other questions you'd like to share with us here, please do that. This spontaneity gives space to individuality. This spontaneity gives root in individuality. Because often the debate is Judaism rigid, or is there space to find one's own individuality, one's own unique path within Judaism? So often Judaism seems to be rigid. You got to do this, you got to do that. You can't do this, you can't do that. That's what it seems like. And the truth is, you're right. In many instances, Judaism does dictate to us how to behave and how to practice. And that's maybe the more rigid, the more disciplined side to Judaism, side to Torah. It's the path that follows the solar cycle. It's the path that says every morning a sheep and every afternoon a sheep. And this is how you should do it. This is how you should not do it. And that's important for Judaism to know. And for us as people who are trying to strive for more and to grow, we need to have a system in place. If we don't have a system, it's chaos. If everyone can do as they wish, you have no religion. So Judaism creates a framework. It's the framework. It's the solar cycle. But then we come along and then we search for individuality. Then we search for our unique touch. Then we search for our unique place within Judaism. And that's where the lunar cycle, the Levana, the moon that dictates our calendar, that's where that steps in. Why? Because when we follow that lunar calendar, there's changes all the time. For example, the kavanah that I have, or the requests that I make in the Amidah. The requests that I make in the Amidah are different to the requests you make in the Amidah. You have certain requests in mind. I have certain requests in mind. So our requests are different, and that's okay. It's okay for you to think yours and for me to think mine. That's good. That's the spontaneity of the moon, of the lunar cycle. It teaches me to be unique today, different to the way I was yesterday, perhaps. We very much believe in that. Or take, for example, what Torah to learn. What Torah do you learn? What sections? Halacha or Chumash or Tanakh or Gemara or Mishnah? There's so much to, or Zohar or Kabbalah. There's so much to learn. So what's the rigid framework? The rigid framework of the solar cycle tells us you've got to learn. A Jew needs to learn. It's our spiritual sustenance. But what's the lunar cycle teaching me is that I can learn what I choose and when I choose it, because it's flexible. So the main thing is I'm learning. What I'm learning is my choice. That's part of the lunar cycle. When it comes to tzedakah, The same phenomenon takes place there as well. The Torah tells us to give tzedakah. 10% is part of tzedakah. But where I give to and how I allocate it, which man I give it to, or which poor woman or man I give it to, or which institution or organization I give it to, that's already my choice. That's spontaneity, flexibility, based on the solar calendar. I see Derek's comment on YouTube. Mass education versus having a personal connection with a Rav is vital in allowing people to not just be one of a huge group. Absolutely. Fantastic. Good stuff. Thank you, Derek. So Derek says mass education versus having a personal connection with a Rav is critical. Right. So I would say like this, Derek. The mass education has an advantage in the fact that it sets a framework. Right? It sets a framework. Every day, 10:30, we go online. We have 40 people online today, thank God, listening on Facebook and YouTube. It creates a framework. Right? That's based on the solar calendar. It's every day the same thing with no change. Okay, obviously we want to try and be creative and innovative. That's not the focus right now. That's the mass education aspect. But then you're absolutely right. It's critical to have a personal connection with a rabbi, with a Rav, because that personal connection now starts to personalize the Yiddishkeit. It starts to make it more personal. The lunar cycle teaches us to be personalized. Every day has its unique size, its unique show of the moon. That's what personalizes it. So for me, I have one level of connection to Torah, to Judaism, with the connection to my rabbi who guides me. The other person has his connection or her connection. So that's very, very much true. It's a good example of the balance of both. Can any of you give further examples to where we see the balance of the solar calendar, the rigid, defined, regular, consistent, versus the lunar calendar, which is spontaneous, different, change, etc.? Let me know. Even in Judaism, we have that. You know, the modern world is pushing for religions to innovate. If the modern world is innovating, economics and finance, technology and social media is all innovating, Judaism also needs to innovate and get creative and find new ways of reaching people and engaging with people. It's so true. So true. But it's not only that. Innovation alone is not enough. You've got to have consistency. You've got to have a framework. And so that's a tough balance that we have as rabbis and lay leaders. We have such a tough balance in finding the balance between the two. Finding that balance. How do we find that balance? On the one hand, we want to remain faithful and connected to our authentic Yiddishkeit, our authentic Judaism. That's so important for us. We want to stay close to what the Torah says and what the rabbis have taught us. That's critical. If we start changing that, we don't have Judaism anymore. So the solar calendar tells me how to be guided by certain principles. And those are principles that are going to draw the line. At the same time, the lunar calendar, the moon and the change of the moon teaches me, try and be creative. Try and be innovative. Go on social media and try and teach from there. I mean, we've had 40 students here, 40 viewers here today at least, with people logging off and logging on. But about 40 at one shot. When would I get that? Any share? Who gets 40 people on a regular day at 10:30 in the morning for a Torah share? So innovation is cool. It's fantastic. It's like the moon, the lunar cycle. It keeps on innovating and changing. But it's got to be within a framework. And that framework is obviously the guidance and the protocol and the structure of Torah and Judaism. So that's been our conversation today, focusing on Rosh Hodesh, understanding the lunar cycle and the solar cycle, understanding the messages that they teach us. David Seif, the high and low tides, also dictated mainly by the moon, varying according to the varying distance to the earth. Interesting. That's right. The moon dictates the high and low tides. That's correct. So I thank you all for being here. If you have any other comments or questions, I appreciate the ones who have already come forward. I think YouTube was a lot busier today than Facebook was in terms of comments. But nonetheless, I've been enjoying having you all here. As I've told some of you privately, there's no must or obligation to comment and share. If you just prefer to be a silent viewer or listener, that's also okay. I've really enjoyed being here today. We're going to be back here tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. on Facebook and YouTube. I hope you'll join me there. In the meantime, keep safe, keep sane, and keep spiritual.